There's something about windows at night that can feel unsettling. During the day, they let in sunlight and fresh air. But at night, they turn into dark mirrors, reflecting your own face while hiding whatever could be standing outside. I think we've all had that moment where we glance at the window and wonder, what if someone was out there, watching? Most of the time, it's just our imagination. But for some people, that thought turned terrifyingly real. In this video, I'll share 3 true horror stories where someone really was outside the window. These aren't just ghost tales or urban legends. These are stories from people who swear they lived through the fear of being watched. So, if you're watching this late at night, maybe close your curtains first. Because once you hear these stories, you might not feel so comfortable with your window wide open anymore. Let's start with the first story, a late-night encounter that turned what should have been a peaceful evening into a nightmare no one would want to experience. This first story comes from a guy who had just moved into a small rental house near the edge of town. The place was cozy, but it sat close to the woods. And at night, the darkness outside felt endless. One evening, he stayed up late playing games. The only light in the room came from his monitor, and the window beside him reflected his face like a mirror. Everything felt normal until he noticed something odd in the reflection. At first he thought it was just a trick of the light, but when he leaned closer, he realized the reflection wasn't his. It was darker, taller, and standing just outside the window. He froze. His house sat on the second floor, meaning the window should have been too high for anyone to reach. Yet he swore he saw the faint outline of a head slowly tilt, like someone trying to peek inside. Heart racing, he turned off the monitor to see clearly through the glass. The yard outside was pitch black, and for a moment, there was nothing. He almost laughed at himself until the glass fogged up, as if someone exhaled right against it. That's when panic set in. He pulled the curtains shut and sat back down, trying to convince himself it was his imagination. But then came the sound, 3 slow taps on the glass, like knuckles rapping against it. He wanted to run, but curiosity kept him frozen in place. He peeked through the curtain, just slightly, and what he saw made his stomach drop. A pale face, featureless except for dark, hollow-looking eyes, staring straight back at him. He stumbled backward, nearly knocking over his chair. The curtain fell shut again, and he could hear the faint scrape of nails dragging across the glass, long and deliberate. Gathering what little courage he had, he grabbed his phone to call the police. But when he looked back, the noise had stopped. The room was silent again, except for his shaky breathing. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, he built up the nerve to open the curtain again. The window was clear, no face, no fog, no scratches. Just the dark, empty yard staring back. He told himself it was stress, maybe even a dream. But when the police arrived, they didn't laugh it off. They pointed out something he hadn't noticed before. Right there in the dirt below his window were footprints. Large, heavy, and leading straight from the woods to the wall beneath his room. No ladder, no equipment, just prints that stopped right below the glass. The officer looked at him and said, "If I were you, I'd keep those curtains closed at night." It sounded like a joke, but his tone didn't carry any humor. That night, he barely slept. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind brushing the walls made him think someone was still out there, waiting. In the days after, he tried to ignore it. Life went back to normal until a week later, when he woke up to something even worse. His window, the one he always kept locked, was wide open. The curtains swayed in the breeze, and his room felt ice cold. He swore he hadn't touched the latch. And the scariest part, the dirt on the floor, right below the window frame, looked like it had been disturbed by something climbing in. He checked the entire house, every closet, every corner. Nothing. No sign of forced entry, no broken locks, just that open window. For the next few nights, he slept on the couch downstairs, keeping the lights on. But even then, he thought he heard faint tapping on the windows around the house, like someone circling outside. One night he mustered the courage to sit by the window with his phone camera ready. Hours passed with nothing, but just as he was about to give up, the faint sound of breathing pressed against the glass again. He lifted his phone, snapped a picture, and froze when he saw the image. In the frame, just behind the reflection of his own face, was another dark, pale, and grinning. By the time he ripped the curtains shut, the figure was gone. No trace of it outside, no footprints this time, nothing. Just a picture on his phone, proof that he hadn't imagined it. He showed the photo to a few friends, but most brushed it off as a glitch or a trick of the light. Still, he knew what he saw, and no amount of denial could shake the fear he felt. Eventually, he moved out of that house, leaving the memory and the picture behind. But even now, he swears he can look out a window at night without feeling like something is staring back. And honestly, I don't blame him. Because when you think about it, windows are just thin barriers between you and whatever's outside. And sometimes, that's not enough. So the next time you glance out your window after dark, remember his story. Because what's on the other side may not just be shadows, it might be something watching you, waiting for you to look back. That was the first story. Creepy enough, right? But don't relax yet, because the second story takes that same fear of the window and turns it into something even more disturbing. This one isn't about strange faces or scratches, it's about a chilling encounter that proved someone was standing outside, watching, the whole time. And the scariest part, the person telling it didn't realize until it was almost too late. So let's get into it. Story number 2 might just make you rethink how safe your own windows really are. And honestly, if you're watching this near a window right now, you might want to close it before we go any further. This second story comes from a girl who lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Her room faced the backyard, where a tall fence kept things private. At least, that's what she thought. Most nights, she'd study by her desk near the window. The curtains were usually open just a bit to let in the breeze. One evening, while reviewing notes, she felt like someone was watching her. She brushed it off at first, blaming stress from school. But then, her dog downstairs began barking furiously toward the backyard, refusing to stop. Curious and a little nervous, she looked up from her desk and glanced outside. That's when her stomach dropped. Standing just beyond the window, in the faint glow of the porch light, was a man. He wasn't moving. He wasn't saying anything. He just stood there, half hidden in the shadows, staring directly at her through the glass. She froze, unsure what to do. For a second, she thought maybe it was a neighbor who'd wandered in by mistake. But then she noticed his grin wide unsettling and far too intentional. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. When she glanced back, he was gone. The yard looked empty, as if nothing had been there at all. She locked the window and pulled the curtain shut, heart racing. Minutes later, the sound of footsteps crunched against the gravel outside, circling the house. She whispered into her phone as she dialed 911, explaining someone was in her yard. The operator told her to stay calm and stay inside until officers arrived. Those minutes dragged on forever. The footsteps would stop for a while, then start again slow. Deliberate, like he wanted her to know he was still out there. Finally, flashing red and blue lights lit up the street. She ran to greet the officers, explaining what she'd seen. They searched the backyard and surrounding area, but found nothing. The police assured her it might have been a trespasser passing through, but the look in her eyes told a different story. She knew he wasn't just passing through. That night, she barely slept. Every rustle of leaves outside made her flinch. But she thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. The next evening, she made sure the curtains stayed closed. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was like her body knew something her mind didn't want to accept. When she finally gathered the courage to peek through the fabric, her heart nearly stopped. The man was back closer this time, right up against the window pane, his grin wider than before. She screamed, dropping the curtain, and her parents came rushing in. By the time her father stormed outside, the man had vanished again into the dark. The police were called once more, and this time they found footprints in the soft dirt leading away from the house. They promised to keep patrol cars in the neighborhood for a while. For a week, everything was quiet. No strange noises, no shadows, no signs of the man. She almost convinced herself it was done. Then one night, she heard tapping, soft, rhythmic, coming from the glass. She didn't want to look, but her curiosity got the better of her. Slowly pulling the curtain aside, she expected to see the grin again. But instead, there was a note pressed against the glass, written in messy handwriting. "I can still see you." She dropped the curtain, heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Her parents called the police again, but when they searched the yard, the note was gone. That was the last time she ever saw the man. But the thought of him standing there, watching, smiling still haunts her to this day. And honestly, I don't blame her. Imagine thinking you're safe in your own room, only to find out someone's been standing outside, watching every move you make. Stories like this prove how vulnerable windows really are. We think of them as harmless, but at night, they can become openings for something far more sinister. Her experience shows how quickly just another night can turn into a nightmare, and it makes you wonder how many times has someone looked in your window without you even knowing. That's why this story sticks with me. It wasn't about ghosts or shadows, it was about a real person, someone who chose to be there, to watch, to scare. The scariest part is, people like that don't just disappear. They're out there, lurking, waiting for the next window left unguarded. So next time you think about leaving your curtains open, remember this story, because you never know who might be standing just outside. That was story number 2. Creepy enough? Well, the last story might be the one that keeps you awake tonight, because this one isn't just about seeing someone outside a window, it's about what happens when they try to get in. This last story comes from a college student who rented a small apartment near campus. Her bedroom faced the street, and the window sat just a few feet from the sidewalk. Convenient in the daytime, but unsettling at night. One night, she stayed up late, working on an essay. Around midnight, she heard faint scratching sounds near the window. At first, she thought it was just tree branches brushing the glass. But when she looked up, her blood ran cold. 2 hands were pressed against the window, large, pale hands, fingers spread wide, leaving smudges on the glass. She gasped, pushing back from her desk. Whoever it was didn't move. They just stood there, pressing harder, as if testing how strong the barrier was between them. She grabbed her phone to call security, but before she could dial, the hand slid slowly down the glass, making a squeaking sound that made her skin crawl. She turned off her lamp, hoping the darkness would make her less visible. But then came the sound of heavy breathing, muffled, but close, like it was seeping through the window pane. The figure leaned forward, and for a split second, she caught a glimpse of his face. Not ghostly or pale, just an ordinary man, eyes wide with an unsettling intensity. That detail was what scared her most. This wasn't a haunting. This was a real person, standing outside her window at midnight. She whispered into the phone, calling campus security. They told her to stay inside, lock the doors, and wait until help arrived. Minutes crawled by. She stayed crouched on the floor, heart pounding, as the man began knocking. Not hard, just steady, deliberate taps that felt like they were meant to unnerve her. Finally, she heard footsteps running up the hallway outside her door. Security had arrived. By the time they rushed to the window, the man was gone. They searched the street but found no one. The only evidence left behind were greasy handprints smeared across the glass. The officers reassured her, but one admitted quietly, "You're not the first student to report something like this. Whoever he is, he's been around before." For weeks after, she couldn't sleep near the window. She pushed her bed to the other side of the room and kept the curtains closed tight. But no matter what she did, the image of those hands pressed firmly against the glass, fingers spread wide, stayed burned into her mind. Then, one night, she heard it again. The slow, deliberate tapping on the window. She refused to look, frozen in place, praying it would stop. The tapping grew louder, then faded. When she finally peeked in the morning, new handprints covered the glass. She reported it again, but there wasn't much the campus could do. Security promised extra patrols, but the man was always one step ahead. Her friends started taking turns staying over so she wouldn't have to be alone at night. Even then, sometimes they'd wake up to the sound of tapping, the faint silhouette of a figure outside the curtain. Eventually, she broke the lease and moved out. She didn't care about the penalty. Peace of mind was worth it. But even after leaving, she admitted that every time she saw her own reflection in a window, she expected to see another face staring back at her. Stories like this prove that sometimes the scariest things aren't ghosts or shadows, they're people. And that's what makes them even more terrifying. Because how do you stop someone determined to scare you? Someone who knows exactly where you live, and exactly which window you sleep beside. Her story isn't just creepy, it's a reminder of how fragile our sense of safety really is. A thin sheet of glass is the only thing keeping us separate from whoever might be outside. And the truth is, most of us don't think twice about our windows. We close the curtains, lock the latch, and assume that's enough. But for her, it wasn't. The hands on the glass became a symbol of the fear she carried long after she left that apartment. A reminder that sometimes, danger doesn't knock on the door, it scratches at the window. And I think that's why her story sticks with me. Because it's not just a scary tale, it's something that could happen to anyone. That's the real horror. Not ghosts, not monsters, just a person outside your window, waiting for you to notice them. So next time you sit by your window late at night, maybe take a second look, because you never really know who or what might be standing just on the other side. That wraps up our third story, but before we finish, let's take a moment to close things out. Because these stories leave us with one final thought. How safe are we, really, when the sun goes down? And that's it. 3 true horror stories about someone standing outside the window, each one different, but they all share the same terrifying thought. What if the safety of your own room isn't as secure as you believe? High schools, apartments, quiet neighborhoods, doesn't matter where you are. Once night falls, windows can feel less like a barrier and more like an invitation for something on the other side. So the question is, do you believe these stories are just paranoia? Or could they be real experiences from people who are unlucky enough to find out the truth? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you made it this far, don't forget to leave a like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more creepy tales every week. Thanks for watching. And tonight, before you go to bed, maybe double check that your curtains are closed and your windows are locked, because you never know who might be standing just outside. Sleep well, if you can.